Hello friends, welcome to yet another edition of Yuvavani program by Bamboosa Library volunteers. I'm Tayang and I'm joined by Khushiali. Both of us will interview today's our special guest who is no stranger to the people of Dibang and Lohit and Anjar region, Dr. Ambika Aiyadurai, a well-known anthropologist who has lived closely with the villagers in the hills of Dibang and Anjar. Dr. Ambika is currently Associate Professor in the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences in IIT Gandhinagar in Gujarat. As a researcher of wildlife conservation with an interest in human-animal relations, she has been studying closely community-based conservation efforts in Arunachal. She has also been a very caring teacher for her students, urging them to bring out the best. Her book, Tigers Are Our Brothers, published by Oxford University Press, has been highly appreciated and won her many admirers across the world. She is also co-author of two more books, Ecological Entanglements and More Than Just Footnotes. Now, handing over to Khushiali, a wildlife researcher, she worked at Wildlife Institute of India.
Ma'am, welcome to the studios of All India Radio, Tezu. We are so happy to have you back in Lohit. Ma'am, to start with, you hail from Tamil Nadu, normally a hot region. How did you develop an interest to work in such cold areas like Anzau and Anini?
Thank you so much, Khushiali, and thank you so much, Keseo. And it's good to see you, Khushiali, again. Coming to Lohit now, I've been coming to Lohit for many years. But when you asked, originally I belong to Tamil Nadu, but I've lived in different parts of the country. I did my schooling in Andhra, Chhattisgarh, and college in Gujarat. And for my post-graduation, I went to Dehradun. My father was in a government job, so I had the opportunity to travel to many parts of the country. But Arunachal happened after my master's in Wildlife Institute of India, Dehradun. After I finished, I joined an organization, a non-governmental organization in Delhi. The name of the organization is Wildlife Trust of India. So the director, Mr. Vivek Menon, when I joined, he said, "Oh, you're a wildlife biologist?" And I had studied jackals for my masters, Asiatic jackals in Gujarat. And he said, you have studied wild, he said, dogs. Jackals are also dogs, right? So there is a problem. There is a dog problem in Itanagar Wildlife Sanctuary. Dog problem, he's talking about Asiatic wild dogs. It's called dhol. It's also called rang kukur or lal kutta. It's red in color with black tail. So these dogs were attacking mithun calves. So I was sent by these organizations from Delhi to go to Itanagar, and that was my first trip. This is back in 2002. So I didn't go to Arunachal on my own. I think Arunachal called me to visit and do this study. The study was in and around Itanagar Wildlife Sanctuary, and people in and around Itanagar were actually also harming the wild dogs. And wild dogs are protected animals. According to Wildlife Protection Act, you cannot hunt wild dogs. So for this I was sent to Arunachal to study this conflict. It's called human-animal conflict because there is the wild dogs are killing mithuns. And mithuns are very valuable for communities in and around Itanagar. And Itanagar, people around the wildlife sanctuary were also killing dogs out of retaliation. So I went to study that, and that's why I came to Arunachal. So I did study in multiple districts here, and I think that's what does, because I came here to study wild animals, but while studying wild animals, I interacted with people. Then I realized the knowledge about the wildlife people have. I had studied wildlife science from a well-known institute, from Wildlife Institute. So I studied how to do research, how to collect data. But what people were telling about the animals in their forest was very, very rich knowledge. And that knowledge is not taught in the schools, right? In schools we study science-based knowledge, ecology, what does the animal do, where does it go, what do they eat. But when you talk to people, they are giving me knowledge about how people understand these animals, that people come to the farms to eat their crops sometimes, or people use these animals for consumption, trading, and also some of these animals are important for communities.
So you came to Arunachal for the wild dogs as a wildlife biologist. How did you get interested in indigenous hunting practices?
Yeah, I will take it again. This when I visited Itanagar Wildlife Sanctuary, so I was accompanied by a elephant researcher. His name is Surendra Verma. So we both were. So our job, the job given to us, the responsibility given to us was by the Forest Department. So the Forest Department of Arunachal contacted the Delhi-based NGO, Wildlife Trust, and I used to work for them. And they said, can you go and study this? I had never been to Arunachal at that time. At that time, Arunachal was very, even now it is far, but I'm talking about 2002, 2003. My colleague Surendra Verma, he has visited Arunachal Pradesh a lot. So we both came to Itanagar Wildlife Sanctuary. Our job was to find out what is the reason the wild dogs are attacking Mithun. So our job was to find out, okay, they are attacking and eating, wild dogs are eating Mithun calves. What about other animals, the food for wild dogs in the forest? What kind of food they eat? So we walked in the forest to look at animals inside the sanctuary. So we were accompanied by a forest guard, not forest guard, field assistant, someone who came with us. He was our assistant, allotted to us by the forest department, and he was carrying a gun with him. And I had never seen a gun. So he said, no, because this is forest area, so for protection he was carrying gun. And we were looking for wild animals, how many animals are there, but we didn't see any animals, but we see a lot of footprints and animal droppings. And this assistant who came with us, he had a gun. I saw him pointing the gun to shoot some bird. And immediately I stopped him actually. That was quite, that incident is still very fresh in my mind, even though it happened 20 years back. And I said, in Hindi, I told that, no, आप इसको मारना नहीं. And he responded to me in Hindi saying that, madam, खाने के लिए मार रहा हूँ. And I still stopped him. I said, no, this is a wildlife sanctuary, ये तो protected area है, आप नहीं मार सकते. After that incident, what I felt is I also felt a sense of guilt, because I was there only for 4 or 5 days to do this research. And then I'll go back to Delhi. I'm not from Arunachal. I have a degree in wildlife science. So I felt, on what basis did I stop him? So I felt maybe I stopped him because we were inside a national wildlife sanctuary. And then I had studied wildlife sciences in college, where we read about Wildlife Protection Act, ENA marna, Bone marna, all of them have certain restrictions and punishment. But that incident actually left, I thought I was also a bit selfish, because he said khane ke liye, which is also in remote places people hunt and consume animals, because some of these places are remote places. And if people are living deep inside the forest, there is no market connectivity. Even now in many remote places, for the markets you have to walk long distances. So I felt sense of guilt, and then that guilt remained with me for many years. But on the same day, what happened in the evening is when I visited people's homes. So I did a forest survey and I did social surveys. So in the social survey, I would visit household survey. I had a questionnaire and I would ask questions. कौन सा जानवर आपके आसपास आता है? घर के पास कौन सा जानवर आता है? So they will talk about animals like civets and all. Civet, small carnivores. उसको उन लोग मुर्गी चोर बोलते हैं, because they come and steal the poultry. And so these stories about how people told about stories, what stories people told about animals was very fascinating. And they also said, and they got, in fact, they got very interested in my research. So they were sitting and talking for hours and telling stories of animals. And they also said, आपको research करना है तो आपको कौन से महीने में आना है, तब जानवर दिखेगा. So they were advising me, in fact helping me to advising me which season to come. And they showed multiple traps for capturing animals. So I started documenting that, making drawings and taking pictures. And then next day I went with them in the forest. There they showed me some traps. And I think For me, these traps are knowledge systems. They are actually only if you know about the animal you can prepare these traps. So I was very fascinated by the knowledge they have. So I started looking at hunting. Of course, hunting is illegal. There is a Wildlife Protection Act. There should be reduction in hunting. But by reducing hunting, they're also losing the knowledge system. How far do they go? कौन सा जानवर कौन सा महीने में आता है, कहाँ आता है? So all these things. So I started documenting that. So I feel, of course, it is an illegal act, but उनका जो आसपास का knowledge है ना, उसके आसपास उसको हमको document करना चाहिए. Because in the future hunting may decrease, but I think we should just document fishing technology, fishing techniques, hunting practices, कौन सा trap use करते हैं, कहाँ लगाते हैं. कुछ traps पेड़ के ऊपर लगाते हैं, कुछ traps ज़मीन में आता है, पानी के पास. So I got interested in that, and even though I was there for like 4 or 5 days, but that led to a long-term survey. I got interested in indigenous hunting practices. So when I started to read books on Arunachal, कहीं traps के बारे में आता है in very old books. But nobody has done a serious study on this because उनको लगा कि ये तो illegal है, इसको तो बंद करना चाहिए. But I looked at that as an economic practice that people are practicing and associated that with knowledge systems, what we call traditional knowledge systems or indigenous knowledge systems. So I started a long-term survey of, I looked at Tayang among Monpa groups, East Kameng में Nishi, Sepa, I went to Sepa, and then Anjao district में Kaman Mishmi, and then a small study among the mayors. So that was in 2005-06, after this initial visit to Itanagar Wildlife Sanctuary.
From documenting the indigenous hunting practices, later, what made you think of studying community-based conservation?
Yeah, I think as I progressed in my, so after the initial survey, I did my second master's in anthropology, so when I studied anthropology, so my topic remained the same, wildlife conservation. Earlier I looked at wildlife conservation from a biology, ecology perspective, from a science perspective. When I shifted to anthropology, I'm looking at conservation from people perspective, people-centric understanding. So one of the things, this was my MSc Anthropology fieldwork in Anjao district. So I lived in Yatang Basti, and then visited Gab. Then I spent some time in Gab village, beyond Yatang. So there I did interviews of people who are men who are actively hunters, or people who actually they are farmers also, but they will spend some time bringing. So I did documentation about how far do they go. And one of the things they said that they don't hunt all the animals. There are some animals which don't hunt, which they do not hunt. And when I interviewed them, they also said that when they go for hunting, they would ask for permission from certain spirits. And in Kaman Mishmi, they are called Shutto, mountain spirits. So when I'm studying anthropology, my study is not restricted to animals. It is taking me to non-human realm of spirits and puja mein. So some animals, for example, they said they don't hunt tigers. Same thing in Idumishmi also. Tigers are not hunted. So what is happening is I got interested in how community looks at animals in general, and then I understood. People told me that not all animals are hunted. That means there is some kind of conservation practices they already have. And many would say that अगर conservation practices नहीं होता ना, ये सब खत्म हो जाता. Because there are some kind of conservation, inbuilt conservation strategy that people have. That is one. Second thing is the landscape itself is very difficult to work in. So even if people are going for hunting, they are going to specific sites. And they often say that हम जहाँ तहाँ नहीं जाते हैं. We don't hunt any animal, specific animal they hunt. And some animals are preserved in the traditional systems. So what happened is I've been saying that instead of painting the entire community as sab marte hain, sab khate hain, this is the very stereotypical commentary that I hear from outside Arunachal, that there is everything. But when you start working with community, you realize that hunting is not easy. It's not that you just go and bring lots of. So it requires a lot of knowledge, a lot of hard work, and not all animals are hunted. So I started documenting the taboo system. taboo system of which animals are prohibited within the community and which, for example, अगर कोई जानवर खेती में आ रहा है तो खेती बचाने के लिए तो traps लगाते हैं. That is for economic reason. खेती को बचाने के लिए. Some are hunted for markets and all. So I been saying that community की तरफ से क्या-क्या conservation पहले से हो रहा है. मॉडर्न कंजर्वेशन आने के बाद मॉडर्न कंजर्वेशन है कि नेशनल पार्क बना लीजिए, रूल्स बना हुआ, आप वाइल्ड लाइफ लॉज बनाइए, वो गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से कंजर्वेशन आ रहा है. बट कम्युनिटी की तरफ से भी तो कंजर्वेशन पहले से हो रहा है ना. तो वो क्या क्या है करके मुझे दैट्स व्हाई आई गॉट इंटरेस्टेड इन कम्युनिटी कंजर्वेशन प्रैक्टिसेस बाय कम्युनिटीज. एंड देन यू सी लॉट ऑफ इंटरेस्टिंग थिंग्स अबाउट हाउ डू पीपल प्रिजर्व देयर what are the conservation practices by the community. For example, in Idumishmi, even after hunting also they have to follow 5 days of gina mante hai na. Lasun pyaj or even to sleep with their partners is not permitted. And this is like by practicing this, men are not permitted to hunt frequently. So they cannot go to every day to the forest and bring something. And even when they are bringing animals, there are some rituals they do, so that they feel that the animals are not theirs, the animal belong to forest spirits. So you have to take permission. There is lot of rules and regulation they follow. Even the names of the animals sometimes, which the names of the animals in the village, which that is spoken on a day-to-day basis, जंगल में वो जानवर का नाम बदल जाता है. They won't say the same name क्योंकि उनको लगता है कि सेम नेम बोलने से फॉरेस्ट स्पिरिट को पता चल जाता है. सो जानवर का नाम भी बदल जाता है जब इन्हें गोइंग फॉर हंटिंग. सो ये सब चीज़ अनलेस यू वर्क स्टे विद द कम्युनिटी एंड राइट इट डाउन, ये पता नहीं चलता है. और मुझे लगता है कि ये जो नॉलेज सिस्टम है वो बायोलॉजिस्ट को भी पढ़ना चाहिए. तो मेरा इंटरेस्ट कम्युनिटी में इसलिए आया कि वो जो नॉलेज सिस्टम है जो लोगों के पास, दैट पीपल्स नॉलेज सिस्टम ऑल्सो शुड बी acknowledged, documented and taught to our younger generation. You can't say that ठीक है we study science, we study technology and all. That is also important. But people who live with the forest, people who are doing farming, people who are doing hunting or fishing, their knowledge system is also very important. That's why I'm more interested in now. My interest is to look at communities' knowledge systems and also documenting what are the names of animals. Because languages everybody speaking Hindi, so vernacular language, names of animals is also important. So documenting. So that's why I'm more interested in community. And I also feel that in the long run, people have to take conservation on their own hand rather than people from outside, scientists and forest department putting laws. Community they have always been conserving, but we should acknowledge that and welcome that.
Ma'am, as a single lady living in a distant hilly village with no network, no proper concrete road, how did you adjust with villagers? Did you find it hard?
No, I think when I look back in terms of geographically it is remote. To reach places like Anjao, Dibang, it takes time. Luckily my university had funding. So compared to many other students who don't have funding, I was lucky because I got good field grants. So I was able to hire vehicle to reach these places. So funding helped me to, but still after some time, for example, in 2008-9, I went to Chaglagam and Taflagam. So there was a major roadblock. I was sitting in Haileong IB. I had a field assistant who said he was ready to go, but the road was blocked. My time was running out. So he had a bike, and we both got dropped in one village just across Haileong, forgetting that way. So I stayed there for a whole night. It was raining all day, and because of that rain, there was a roadblock somewhere. And they said what to do. I waited for one day, no sign of. But the following day, the sun is out, and the rain stopped, and all the birds were also out. The moment the rain stopped, you hear all the forest sounds and all. Then I said, let's start walking. So from there, we kept on walking, and then we reached a village in between. So we slept there whole night. And from there, somebody had a bike, and then they dropped us to another place, and we slept there also. And then we said we'll start walking. So we went walking up to Chaglagaon. By the time we reached Chaglagaon, it was snowfall. And I went to Chaglagaon. There's a CO office was there, CO residence. So he said nobody was staying there. He said I can stay in that house. Went there. No firewood. It was very cold, dark. Then they said, why nobody is here? I went around asking for, I thought I'll go to somebody's house and see. Very few people were there. They said everybody's in the puja. Some puja was going on. I went there. Everybody was there in that house. And then because everybody thought the road to block ho gaya, ye kahan se aa gaya? And then one man said, अब्बा इतना दूर से आया क्या? अब तो हम मर्दों को ताकत दिया है. So, but then I think I was also young at that time. So for me it was like, no, what do people do when the road gets blocked? They would walk, no?
Yes.
So I said, we'll go. So my assistant was very helpful. And then I stayed there. So one of the things I learned is, whenever I go to the village, there was no problem with food for me because I'm a non-vegetarian. And I adjust when it comes to food, and I don't require, even because of Wildlife Institute training, I think we would actually sleep anywhere, sleep in the tents. And the biggest advantage is, I think as a female, many people will say as a female you may have difficulties, but in this case I think people took sympathy on me, saying that akela itna dur se aaya hai. One thing is, I'm a woman, I've come from very far. And I'm a South Indian. I think people have soft corner for South Indian. I don't know whether it's true or not. But I felt, as a South Indian, I spoke Hindi. And as Arunachali, they speak also very good Hindi, no? We would appreciate each other a lot. And in one village, one person actually said, I was speaking in Hindi, no? He was looking at me very carefully. And he kept looking behind. उनको लगा कि पीछे से कोई बोल रहा है हिंदी. So he thought he really got shocked that मैं इतना अच्छा हिंदी कैसे बोल लेती हूँ. That's because I've lived in Chhattisgarh. I learned Hindi in school. My father said, you learn Tamil, so I can read and write Tamil, speak Tamil. But my father said Hindi is also important, because I think that's why I was able to talk to many people in Hindi. In some elderly people will speak Assamese, and there I would get somebody to translate. So language, food, my gender, and my origins, the place I come from, and also as a person, I'm very curious to so I sit and talk with people for many. And in places where I've stayed, I would participate in Kheti Ka Kaam, in Anani, sometimes taking. I felt guilt as a researcher, as a social anthropologist, and any researcher should think about other people's perspective. I am a visitor here, so I should get adjusted to people's lifestyle. So for example, when you go there, in remote places, I cannot expect 24/7 electricity or hot water. And also, one has to be also very sensitive that in such remote places, how are people living? I'm talking about 2005, 2006, 7, 8 when I traveled. And even in Mayor, in Anjav region also, it's important to see. So they are dependent on firewood a lot because there is no electricity for cooking. So firewood, they will bring bamboo from the forest, right? And here I'll do interviews and start writing, sitting out in the fire. But somebody is bringing the firewood from the forest. I think I felt guilty that, and they would actually ask me, "Thand to nahi lagana," because they thought it was cold. I think cold will be one of the biggest challenges. It was cold, and remote places, yes. But then I went to Taflagam also from Chaglagam. And again I went there. So it was, walking was no problem. But I think if temperature, but again people actually helped me. In Dibang Valley where I stayed in Apia Jongo's house. And they would give me takin skin, and then on top of it there will be a bed. And then I had my sleeping bag. I had a very strong, very good sleeping bag. And inside the sleeping bag there is a layer, shawl ka layer laga ke, and then I will go inside. And every day they will ask, "Thanda laga kya, thanda laga kya." And then I stayed in Anini for a year for my PhD fieldwork. And they also felt bad. So, but they made my stay very comfortable. And in the next time when I came, they actually had a small. This was their bamboo hut, the bamboo changar tha. जब मैं second बाद में छुट्टी I took a break. When I come back, so they built. So again, I feel that it's a lot of I think because of people's concern and care, I was able to do that. Otherwise, no, it's not possible to live on my own in some IB and do this. So living with a family is very important as an anthropologist, and live with the family, eat what they are eating, understand their lifestyle. What is their lifestyle every day? How many times they are going to the forest? Then taking care of the mithun, kheti mein kaam karna, farming. How do they plow their field? What animals do they keep? So I got interested in mithun, sungur, and also ducks and chicken. So these are we focus more on wildlife because we are studying wildlife. So we go to the forest and study all kinds of wildlife, which is very important. But what animals people keep in that, because it's very important livelihood, economic resources, right? So I think if you're a curious researcher and ability to think beyond of course at the end of the day you have to do a research, but you also have to so you have to be curious, you have to be and also acknowledge other people, community's perspective is very important.
I'm so glad that the people of the Mishmi Hills welcomed you with open heart. But I'm really curious to know where the people friendly and supportive in all places of Arunachal where you worked.
No, I think largely I keep telling that if I wouldn't have done this work elsewhere, even in my own state, it would have been very difficult. One thing is about Arunachal is, I think the role of women. If I think the gender position of women in gender equality is more or less better here compared to the rest of whether you look at North India or other places. Why I'm saying this, that when I came to Arunachal, you see women running shops. And if you go to Anini, they are driving bolero. I've never seen women driving boleros and other, and they're very economically independent. They do their own farming, earn money. They also have their own granary in the Mishmi they call Aka. So I think because they're economically independent, of course some of them may be dependent on men. But I have this is what I have never studied gender relations in Arunachal. But from my observation, I feel that, and the hierarchy is less. Hierarchy in all societies, there is some kind of hierarchy, but the degree of gender hierarchy is less here in Arunachal, and because of that, I feel the question is, what did you ask? Sorry, I'm forgetting the question now.
Where the people friendly and supportive.
Yeah, I think that's in terms of safety and all. When I narrate my stories to my colleagues in Gujarat and Dehradun, so one of the things they would ask you, say, was it safe? Akhilesh jaake safe tha kya? Because in the rest of the country you find incidents of treating women badly, women tourists and all. So here they often ask me, did anybody behave badly with you and all that? That has never happened to me. I think the environment is safe here for women. Of course, in some places and I never traveled on my own alone, because I always had somebody my field assistant. Wherever I go, I will take somebody from the village, a young girl or a boy, to come with me to introduce me. And of course, people are very curious. I think out of curiosity, that curiosity made us close to each other. The way I was curious about the researchers, about what people are doing, what is their economy, what is the education level. After the interview, they will also ask the same questions to me. So I think in terms of difficulty, I didn't have language, because people speak very good Hindi. Language was very, very helpful. And in sometimes there were questions like, I think they were no bad experience, but they were curious about what are you doing here alone. When you would actually thought that I've come for some other work. ऐसे hunting का बहाना लेके यहाँ घूम रहा है. They think that I've come for something else. In some places they thought I was a spy, कोई spy है, and कहाँ से आया है. Or sometimes they'll say मैं vaccination के लिए आई हूँ. And if I had a camera, people thought that I'm from Aaj Tak channel, because I was documenting and asking people. curiosity, and sometimes they will come and ask, "आप कहाँ से आए हैं?" Then I would carry my visiting card. So I have a number, phone number, an email ID. So that gave them a lot of trust initially, but once you start coming again and again. But I think convince people that have come to study wildlife was difficult. People thought that इतना दूर कोई wildlife study करने के लिए क्यों आएगा? So, but then once I show them my books and all, no, animal identification book, bird book, then they will take some thing, and then they will sometimes in one village there was one boy who was a college student. He was asking about, no, आपके पास ILP है क्या? Research permit है क्या? Then I would have that, and I understand. I think it's important to ask also. There is nothing wrong in asking a visitor what is the purpose, because we are visitors, no, researchers. So people should ask, actually, should get all the details. And I also tell my students, when you're going to do a field work, you carry your visiting card, tell the purpose, why you are here, what are you doing. And after you write a paper, you send it back to the people, at least the village council hoga. So that's what I did. Whenever I write my papers, I send it to people. Here also I share with many people. Books also, I came back and I distributed books to people in Lower Dibang Valley, and I also did a seminar where you present the work to the community. So I think we have a bigger responsibility. So I think once you have that, I think it's also the training that we should give to our students in college. So to be transparent, to be able to tell what you're doing, what is the purpose. And then very often people get more curious about the research. So I can, in Anjao it happened actually. Some of the assistants who worked with me, collaborators, they would actually, after some time, they would ask a question because they get curious about their own community. Yeah. So no such a serious difficulty.
Friends, we have reached the end of part 1 conversation with Dr. Ambika ma'am. We'll see you in the next part. Hello friends, welcome to yet another edition of Yuvavani program by Bamboosa Library volunteers. I'm Tayang and I'm joined by Khushiali. Welcome to part 2 of our interview. Now, Khushiali will continue the interview with Dr. Ambika ma'am. Dr. Ambika ma'am is currently an associate professor in the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences in IIT Gandhinagar in Gujarat.
You have so many interesting stories. We feel like hearing to your stories more. Do you have any touching experiences of your stay in Arunachal? Can you share some with our listeners?
Yeah. No, I think there are many stories, because I said I've been coming here for many years, right? So you develop very personal connection with families with who you stay, people who help you. In Anjao, as I said, in Anjao I did my master's field work in anthropology. So I was in Yatong with a doctor from Zero Valley, Dr. Kaku. She's now in Tezu. She's posted here. So her house was my field station in Yatong. It's next to the hospital. She's a medical doctor. So I would stay there, and I go to different villages and come back. So once I wanted to go and stay in one particular village for some time to do a village study, and in the same village there was Basila Didi was there. Basila Didi said, if you are going, I can go to her village, which is Gaap, Gaap, which is like a 1 hour uphill trek. So it's like she said, I will send a girl with you. You go. So when I went there, and they said one of their relatives is in Gaap. Why don't you stay there? So I went and stayed in Gaap village, and in that village, their relative's daughter, Ajay Mayun, she gave me a place to stay, and then she said she can. So I asked her to help me to show the village around. So in many ways, she became my field assistant in conservation and social sciences. We say field assistant, who is helping you in the field. So she would take me around, and over a period of time we became so close, because she kept on saying. So I will say, these are the questions. This is what I'm trying to. So I was trying to understand what is the cultural meaning of wildlife hunting. Okay, hunting में तो ठीक है, you bring animal, you eat the meat. you sell the animal in the market, but in addition to that, what are the other meanings attached to hunting? And then and she will say, give some information, and then say we'll go to somebody's house. So it could be a pujari ka ghar, village headman. So she would accompany me, and then she would say, आप यही research करते हैं क्या? इतना ही पूछना है? So she thought it's a ये इसके कौन research करता होगा ऐसा इतना दूर? So she kept on, and beyond a point, initially she said, this is such a this is your research. That's all she would ask, and after that she got interested in that research so much. And there is something she said, ये तो मुझे भी मालूम नहीं था. So because of that significance, we got very close. In fact, it became like a joint project. So I would ask some questions, and then she would get so excited, and she would. So she was very central, very important in completion of that research. And I also felt that she was female, and then and she's also interested in embroidery. I do also embroidery and cooking. So there were a lot of activities we started to. So I stayed in Gap, in the Gap village. I finished my master's dissertation. And I went back to London, my master's dissertation in anthropology. I studied in University College London. So when I was writing, so in fact while coming back to Yatong from Gap, she actually walked with me. She said, I'll come to see you off. And then, she gave me a gift, and when I said bye to her, she had teary eyes. Both of us had teary eyes, and I felt that I think in places like this, when you don't have your own family, people with whom you live, they become their family, because we stay with them and cook together, eat together, and festivals mein bhi saath mein jate hain. And when I'm writing field notes, she would come and help me also, to help me some language, some words she would translate. So the work we do, it's not possible to do on your own. It's impossible. If somebody is saying that, no, I went there, I collected this data and coming back, it's not possible. So people's inputs, people's contribution to our own work is important. कभी-कभी लगता है कि उनको भी डिग्री दे देना चाहिए. हमको तो डिग्री मिलता है ना, PhD and masters. But because without people's help, it's not possible. So we became very close, not only because of work, but also many other things that we shared. So I've written a story about this also. So when I came back to Yatong and I was living, it was a very emotional moment for separation. And she gave me a nice gale, which I still have. So I went back to London. I was writing the thesis. I got a phone from Bapan Didi. Bapan Didi told me that Ajay Ma is no more. And she had jaundice and cerebral malaria. By the time Gap se niche aate waqt, she passed away. And that was quite a difficult thing during. And then I dedicated my master's thesis to her. And sometimes you feel that, because at the moment when you're writing the thesis, she's not there. It was a very important part. And also it was like losing a good friend. And then many years later, I wrote a tribute to her, which is published in an article. I gave it was a tribute to Ajay Mayun. And then so this is a very emotional story. But other things, like, of course, there are times when people took care of me. In Aileong, once I felt very before starting the master's work, I fell ill, and so I had very bad stomach, and one Apadani doctor was posted in Aileong. So he took care of me. I'm asking his Nepali assistant to take care of me. 3 days I was in her house. And then I went to Yatong. Same thing in Dibang Valley also. Dibang Valley also I stayed with family. Apya Jungo, Ashaya and all. They were very instrumental in helping me. So one of the happiest moment will be when I came back finishing my thesis. And then people welcoming me. So it's like a home now. Now I keep coming here. When I came back, we had a big party in Anini. And for the book also we had, Khushiali was there. So you feel this is continuing. So I think there are a lot of stories. I think this one was very emotionally and very, very touching moment for me to remember.
Now, since you have mentioned about Gap village, the people of Gap, they still remembers you. Like,
did you go recently?
Yes, last year, 2023, I went with my own set of questionnaire for Takin. I went to house. I went to a Gaugura's home. I showed him the picture. I said, "ये ख्यम देखा है आप कैसा मारते हैं कहाँ गया है?" Places I was asking, and they said like आजकल का बच्चा लोग घर घर आके जंगली जानवर का पढ़ाई कर रहे हैं क्या? Long back एक लड़की आई थी करके. He was mentioning you actually. Many years. He was an old man. So leaving that apart, what inspired you to write the book Tigers Are Our Brothers? Why did you take tiger as the central theme of your book and not some other animal?
Yeah. No, I think when I was doing my PhD fieldwork in Dibang Valley, I didn't go there to study tigers. Tigers was never part of my plan, but I was more interested in the relations between people in the Dibang Valley and the landscape in general, forest or water, mountains, basically nature, in broadly nature. And then within nature, I was more interested in human-animal relations. So looking at, and then ideas of conservation, because Dibang Valley also has Dibang Wildlife Sanctuary. So when people are protecting, so people have their own landscape, and in the landscape, the government declares a wildlife sanctuary. So I'm more interested in how do people perceive sanctuary, or how do people perceive conservation, what kind of conservation people are doing. So when I was doing interviews and interacting with them, the stories, they would tell me the stories about animals. One of the things they said, tiger to hamara bhai hai. And that phrase stood out very distinctly for me. Because if you look at wildlife conservation, there are tiger census, there are tiger conservation, there are tiger reserves. Tiger is our national animal, it is an endangered species. But nobody has said that tiger hamara bhai hai. So I had, okay, maine note kar diya. But this phrase kept on repeating in many interviews. They would actually say that tiger or idumishmi ek hi maa ka pet se aaya hai. And then they would actually show this, they would actually like feeding both of them. So that was very. So in many ways they are saying that they are kinship. They have a kinship relation with tigers. And at that time I thought if I write something, I will keep this as a title. So this title is not my title. It belongs to people. So people gave me the title, and I have said that all this. That's why spending time with community is very important. Only if you spend time, all this, when what people are saying is important. In fact, my whole book is about Idumishmi's understanding of animals, and I've used tiger because for them, tiger is an important animal, because they share a kinship relations with them, and because they share a kinship relation with them, protecting tiger is important. इसलिए उन लोगों को मारता नहीं है tiger, क्योंकि वो उनका भाई है. Because tiger को मारना एक homicide होता है. That means killing your own kin is seen as, and which is like a biggest sin one can do. So they don't kill tigers. So that's why there are other animals also important. For example, takin. That's an interesting story about takin also. But and in that same place, tigers. I thought I'll keep tiger as a focus animal, because the wildlife sanctuary in Dibang is soon is proposed also as a tiger reserve. So and then many people in Dibang also said that इसमें यहाँ पर tiger reserve की क्या ज़रूरत है? Tiger तो हम protect कर ही रहे हैं. So what you are seeing is two forms of knowledge system. One knowledge system of the community who see tiger as a kinship, tiger as a brother, and then the state perspective. From the state point of view, government क्या चाहता है कि एक area को tiger reserve बना दे. But लोग को ये भी लगता है कि tiger reserve बनाने से हमारा अंदर जाना मना होगा, restriction होगा. So मेरा स्टडी में ये स्टोरीज बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट हो गया. टाइगर का एक सेंट्रल फिगर मान के कैसे अलग अलग ग्रुप, whether it is scientist, whether they are idumishmi, whether there are tourists who are coming, or whether this is a state forest department, how do they understand tiger? So multiple meanings associated with nature or animals became important. So that's why I chose tigers to reflect in the title of the book.
Ma'am, could you also share with us about the book More Than Footprints, Field Assistance in Wildlife Research and Conservation? some stories from Arunachal Pradesh.
Yeah. So this is my latest book, more than footnotes, role of field assistants in wildlife conservation, and the whole book is about stories from Arunachal. So there are 13 chapters, and it's an edited book. I didn't write it on my own. I edited this book with Mamta Pandya, who used to work with Center for Environment Education, my supervisor when I was very young. So the idea of this book emerges from Ajay Mayun's story. When I wrote that story, it was published in Current Conservation, a magazine. And when people read that story about Ajay Mayun, many wildlife researchers started thinking about their own field assistant. That they go there, spend 6 months, 1 year, sometimes wildlife researchers go there multiple years, 3 years, 4 years, and they become very close to their field assistants. But when you're writing your thesis, when you're writing your papers, their names don't come. We don't even acknowledge them. We don't even talk about them. So me and Mamta Pandya, we decided that we will identify 10 to 12 researchers who have worked in Arunachal. And if you make a list of researchers who have worked in Arunachal, you'll find that most of them are from outside Arunachal, from Bangalore, from Calcutta, from Delhi. But the assistants who have helped them, they're all from the community. Depending on which district you have worked, it could be a member of Monpa community or a member of Nishi community. It depends on where you work. So we decided to we contacted researchers, most of them young researchers, to talk about their people who have worked with you. Sometimes you call them friends. They become friends actually, collaborators, assistants. And when we asked them, and everybody was so happy, they said, we never thought of writing about people who helped us doing research, or about the family with whom you stay. Most of us, we stay, researchers actually spend time in the forest, tent laga ke. And so field assistants or field collaborators, they will sometimes help us in our research in many ways, including क्वेश्चनर बनाने में हेल्प करते हैं. कौन सा रूट लेना है जंगल में, because we are outsiders, we don't know the landscape, we don't know the forest, we also don't know the language. So when we come here, who are the people who are helping us doing our PhD work and master's work? So this is a collection of biographies written by wildlife researchers about their field assistants. So each story is about one assistant. So in that book, Hajamai's story is there. And that also has a lot of personal stories. Because what we want to do is wildlife science, of course it's a science, but there is also a lot of human connections. आप सिर्फ इसको science बोल के data collection करके paper publish कर देते हैं. And when people publish their papers, it's only about data, कितना data मिला, you're analyzing the data. And we present it in international conferences, international journals. But we never tell the human story behind this. And when they started writing the human story, some of them are one researcher had actually written that because some places are very difficult. She was studying red panda, and red panda, so it's not easy to sight. And वो पेड़ के ऊपर रहता है, and these trees are very tall. How are you going to find out? Sometimes assistant would climb up, and then red panda कोई branch में उसका वो करता है, dropping होता है उसका. And then these are signs कि red panda आके क्या. How do you study animals which are only active at night, like flying squirrel? A researcher has written about in Namdafa. रात को वो flying squirrel देखने जाता है. Who is going to show him? The field assistant will show him, torchlight लेके, and sometimes in the forest, these are also not very. There are animals in the forest. Leopard हो सकता है. There are times when the assistants have rescued their lives also. Or the student, one researcher actually fell down, injured her leg, and the assistant had to carry on his back and brought. So these are stories of life saving. कभी बीमार पड़ जाते हैं. So it's not only about helping us in data collection, but also becoming very personally. They become our doctors. So in one place somebody got injured, so assistant जाके जंगल से झाड़ी, he got some leaves, crushed it and applied for medicine. So they become our saviors sometimes, saviors of life. So I think it's time that wildlife researchers, wildlife biologists acknowledge this. That आप field में who helped you, इनको, because we don't know their name sometimes. So if you look at more than footnotes book, we have put pictures of all of them in the front page. उनका कभी-कभी नाम भी acknowledgement नहीं आता है. So ये एक I feel that it's our social responsibility भी है, and I call it the academic social responsibility. मैं तो academia में हूँ. हम तो पेपर लिख के चले जाते हैं, लेकिन जो contributions community की तरफ से आया है वो बहुत important है acknowledge करना. तो इसलिए this book is very special to us. I think this is out of the 3 books, this is what is very close to me, because it is about human stories. वो कभी-कभी रह जाता है. We don't acknowledge that.
Now, how do you look at hunting by the people of Northeast? Is it sustainable at the present times?
No, I think in the olden times, right, when the villages were very small, and people used to hunt for sustenance or only at the village level. But now things have changed a lot because there are large-scale development projects, roads have come in. When hunting becomes commercial, if you're doing hunting for the markets, then it can become unsustainable. So there is a lot of concern by the conservationist, by the government, and also community themselves are concerned. If you talk to people, they themselves say, "Abhi bahut dur jaake marna padta hai." What does it mean? That means kam ho gaya janwar, no? That the animals, there are less animal population. Many communities are also acknowledging that we should do something so that the animal doesn't get extinct because of hunting. So in the long run, it may become unsustainable because of the pressure on the forest. No, both by the communities when they're hunting, and also pressure on the forest by development projects. If there are 4-lane coming up, so there are a lot of forest destruction happening, hydroelectric projects coming up, tourism project. So when you're making many homestays, you need space for that, no? Water. So I think we have to look at hunting from multiple perspectives. One thing is, of course, individuals are hunting for consumption, for selling in the market. But what about habitat destruction? Jungle bhi to khatam ho raha hai na, wo hunting se nahi ho raha hai. That is happening because of this development project. So that also should be concerned. So I feel that hunting पे ध्यान रखना चाहिए कि unsustainable ज़्यादा ना हो, लेकिन hunting के साथ साथ landscape में what are the other changes that are happening? Some climate change is also happening. So animals may go far because नीचे गर्मी हो गया है, and it has become so hot in the foothills because of deforestation also, right? So deforestation, habitat landscape, and major development project. Or development is also important. Roads are not there in remote places, right? So roads are also important, electricity is important, but how to keep that balance? So when people ask me, I said, in generally, people say that hunting knowledge among the young people is also decreased, because for the last 2 generations, their children are going to universities. Many of them are now becoming conservationist also. But if you see, the hunting knowledge is gone. So how are people going to hunt? But there may be a few hunters who are doing it for commercial purposes. So that should be stopped. That should be reduced, provided they find some other alternate livelihood. But the larger question to ask is, what is happening to the landscape in general? Habitat khatam ho jayega to janwar tak jayega hi. So to focus on hunting should be there in relation to the larger landscape changes. So we have to look at if you're questioning hunting whether it's sustainable or not, the question to ask is the development that is happening in India in general, Arunachal in particular, is that sustainable? So I think we have to have a conversation in all kinds. But in general, things like if you're doing some rituals and if you're using animal meat, that can be reduced it's already reducing, but more work can be done. And I also feel that there is a lot of interesting conservation projects happening in Arunachal, where actually people are realizing and community themselves are practicing conservation, and we should appreciate that. Community के तरफ से जो conservation program हो रहा है उसको भी हमको notice करके उनको appreciate और notice करना चाहिए.
Can you give us some example of conservation done by the community of Arunachal Pradesh?
there are many examples, but I will start from one which is started around. This was in Pake Tiger Reserve. Nishi people, for Nishi, the hornbills are very important. It's also part of their traditional headgear. So they wear this. They have this hat, on the top of it they have hornbill beak, and traditionally they would hunt hornbills and then use the beak to wear it as a traditional headgear. And this is part of their tradition. They say that every Nishi man would have an original cask for their headgear. And this is around 20 years back, one Wildlife Trust of India, when they started to work in Arunachal, in Pake, and the blame is that people are hunting these animals that are endangered, these birds that are endangered. Hornbill is an endangered bird, and they actually convinced people ki don't kill these birds because it is endangered, and if you keep on hunting, the animals will go forever. And hornbill is also national state bird of Arunachal. And people said that this is part of our culture, hum to chhodenge nahi. So what do you do when people claim that this is part of our culture, will continue? It's a dilemma, no? People say if we give up that hunting, our identity will be lost. Because if you go to Itanagar, people still wear this as a matter of pride. It's a traditional attire, right? So WTI came with a very interesting, innovative idea. They said, what if we give you artificial beak? Original beak छोड़ के हम आपको artificial beak देंगे तो आप पहनेंगे क्या? So उन्होंने क्या किया? Initially they resisted. They said, no, originally we have to preserve our original identity, so we'll leave original hornbill beak. And they said if the beak they provided is wooden beak, and then later they provided them fiberglass beak. It looks exactly the same. So they started accepting slowly, and they signed a MOU with Forest Department of Arunachal, WTI NGO, and a local NGO which the Nishi themselves had created. So you can see a very interesting collaborative project. उसमें government भी है, NGO भी है, और community का तरफ से भी जो उनका जो community council है, village council, उन सब मिलके they assigned an MOU कि हम लोग इसको अभी hornbill को नहीं मारेंगे, और मारेंगे तो ये फाइन होगा. And then WTI ने क्या किया? They started to manufacture this and they give it to everybody. And in the long run, there are studies which shows that in and around Pake, hunting कम हो गया hornbill का, और लोग artificial beak. So next time आप ईटानगर जाओगे, just notice many of them are wearing artificial hornbill. And what is interesting is it is this podum, इसको podum बोलते हैं ना? It is also sold in the market now. So this is a good example to make sure that the species are also preserved and also the culture is also preserved, provided there is a collaboration. So any conservation intervention, no, if you are bringing an alternative to hunting, make sure that उसको अपना culture से अलग ना हो. Culture को भी preserve करके आप उस जानवर को बचा सकते हैं. And अभी दिबांग वैली में भी community conserved area एक start हुआ है. 4 clans of इदुमिश्मी, उन्होंने अपना ज़मीन दिया है community conserve area को बना के. It's called CCA. So इदुमिश्मी का 4 clans मिलके बोला कि ये जो ज़मीन है, this will be for conservation, so there will be no hunting for the next 10 years. So if they are hunting, there will be some fines. So what they are doing is they are restricting hunting in that area, so that it becomes, because in the long run 15-20 years में आसपास all the other animals, other landscape will go, because development, homestay बन जाएगा, tourist lodge बन जाएगा. So community conserve area will be preserved. So they are using the young boys and girls of Idumishmi. They are participating. They are members of the group. They are documenting. हमारा camera trap लगा के कौन सा जानवर है, what are the tree species. So they are doing something very unique. So they are so community involvement से ये है. And another thing is Eagle Nest Wildlife Sanctuary. वहाँ पर भी community themselves have created their own conservation program. So in the long run, community also will be part of the forest landscape. आपको अलग नहीं किया जा रहा है. जानवर भी बचा रहेगा, एक livelihood भी आएगा, and conservation भी होगा. So I think the hornbill beak example from Nishi will be, it's a very interesting example, but there are many others that are happening.
Recently, IITs have started admitting humanities students like the MA course in Society and Culture in IIT Gandhinagar. Why is this special interest of IITs in social sciences? Can our Arunachal students benefit from these courses? And how can they prepare for the admission in IIT?
Currently, I have a MA student who is from Bomdila. Lopsang unka naam hai. So he did his undergraduation in Central University Gujarat, Gandhinagar. It's in Gandhinagar, and IIT is very close to that. So he's our student. So Arunachali students, there are Arunachali students. So Lopsang will be working in ecotourism, but he's a MA program, MA student. And 2 years back, we had Ahi Mega from Lower Dibang Valley. She joined IIT MA program, and she was also my student. She worked in Dibang Valley on Dibang dam resistance and social media. So IT students, of course, Arunachal students are also already coming, but I think they should actually. IT is a wonderful institute. Of course, the main focus is on science and technology. There are BTech programs, MTech programs. IITs also have MA programs, arts MA, and our MA program in IIT Gandhinagar is called MA in Society and Culture. It's a very broad interdisciplinary program, and it is open to anybody with undergraduation in any subject. If you're a commerce student, you can do MA program in IIT. There is an entrance test, interview. It's also open to engineering students. I think it's very important for IIT places like IIT to teach social sciences, because we are teaching students to become good engineers. But engineers are also involved. They are part of the technology world. Tomorrow they will go and design projects, industries. So by teaching them, by exposing them to social sciences, it's important to also tell them to whom you are making these big projects, whether it's projects of dams or industries or designing some building, for example, or designing even any form of project. So they could be designing or working in some, or they could be setting up industries, right? They'll become CEOs of big companies. So it's very important to know for whom the science and technology is, after all. Science and technology is for common people who have to benefit from this science and technology, right? Sometimes, very often, these big projects are also taking away land from people. So I think it's important to show all sides to science and technology, and social science becomes very important actually to sensitize students to think about people, think about environment. So I teach environment in IIT, and I also teach other social science topics. So it's very important, because otherwise, for 4 years they will study and then they would only think about science and technology, machines and development. But why are making these machines for? Machines for people who are using, whether they're working in safe environment or not, whether that science and development should benefit most of the larger poor population also, right? So the idea is to sensitize them to social issues, environmental issues. And of course, students from Arunachal should apply in IITs, and coming there, it's a wonderful institute. So there's an entrance test, there is an interview. So next time, when there is a call for papers, I will circulate. You can share it with your colleagues and students and ask them to apply.
What advice would you give to our students to secure admission in IIT courses?
Yeah, I think for anybody who's applying, especially in Arunachal, right, it's important to think big, because there is a world outside Arunachal, places like IITs, and advice is to have be creative, think big. It's not, of course, many of them will apply for preparing for civil services, but by doing MA Society and Culture, a new world will open for you. And when our IIT in IIT Gandhinagar, I think the space there is very open. If you have any idea if you can do research on any topic. So for example, think about me, who is doing wildlife study in IIT, in humanities and social science. I have that space. So for example, Lopsang is looking at sustainable tourism in Arunachal, and tourism is coming. So you have to, of course, you have to work hard, and try and see what kind of entrance test is that. Please prepare for that. But once you join, the new world will open, and the world is. So I think I encourage students to apply and think big, and and just because it's science and technology doesn't mean that you have to choose a topic only on science and technology. The topic could be anything, weaving patterns of Arunachal, all this, any topic can be there. So I think I encourage students to apply.
Ma'am, as an associate professor at IIT Gandhinagar, what are your current research areas?
Yeah, I think I'm more interested in animals that are not like tigers and elephants and big animals. No, there are animals which are smaller animals, which is also important for. And some animals, for example, I and my colleague Razeko Dele, Dr. Razeko in Itanagar, in Dibang Valley, in Lower Dibang Valley in Rowing, we have written a paper on pigs. And pigs are like, it's a very important economic resources for community, But pigs are always, in our place, we see them as dirty, and when we see them as stigmatized animals. But you come to this side, is a very important animal. It is used for puja. Women spend a lot of time rearing that and sold in the market. So some animals which are not in the mainstream discussion, right? We always think of these animals that are endangered, which is important, but there are animals that are close to community. For example, very few people write about buffaloes, but people write about other animals. So animals that are important to community's perspective, I'm interested in that. But also wild animals that are smaller animals on which the conservation researchers don't focus on. We focus more on these bigger animals. So I'm more interested in human-animal relations among tribal communities, among marginalized communities. कौन सा जानवर रखते हैं वो, क्यों रखते हैं? So that is something I'm more interested in. And of course, more than footnotes, after this book in Arunachal, other state forest department are also asking me to write about stories from their state. So that is something I'm keen to do.
It was very interesting listening to you. We are sure our listeners of All India Radio Tezu too would be enlightened and inspired by your experiences. We hope you visit us again.
Thank you so much, Khushiali and Keseo, for inviting me. I think this interview, it will be very close to my heart. And doing that in Tezu is very important. So thank you so much for your time and inviting me.
So friends, that was our special guest, Dr. Ambika Aiyadurai, a wildlife anthropologist from IIT Gandhinagar, sharing with us interesting bits from her research work and life. So, till we meet on another Yuvavani, this is Tayang signing off. Happy listening.